Let's kick things off then, and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking time this afternoon, this 2 p.m., joining us here for this particular webinar or presentation from us. Now, before I move or pass it on to Roshan, I do want to test out a function with all of y'all here, and this is the poll function. But this poll function is also a question that we'd like to find out from everybody. So I'm going to be sending out a poll to you right now. And the poll reads, in your opinion, which is the most important aspect of the HR function in these challenging times? We'd like you to select your top 3 most critical aspects. Go ahead. Great to see that. So it seems most seem to go towards employee engagement, learning and development, which is great because we are going to cover most of these functions and what they're all about, especially in these sort of challenging times, and how you can virtualize to help your organization. So let me not waste your time and pass it on to Roshan, who's going to kick things off and give you a bit of an overview before passing on to Sashe. Roshan, on to you.
Thanks, Nigesh. And I think, one of the things that, I've been talking a lot in the last couple of weeks about transformation in the HR space. In fact, I had a webinar a couple of weeks ago talking about how do we drive that transformation. And I just want to remind a few, set a couple of reminders as we kick off. I think some of you were also at that session. Let me just talk a little bit about business transformation in general. Now, generally, businesses, and I show a little business life cycle here, right? So this is a typical business. You set up a business, you grow the business, you scale it, and then you reach a point where it's maturity, and then it sort of peaks down. Now, most of the time, right, transformation happens in 2 places. Transformation, the best time is when you're just about to hit the peak. That's the best time for you to transform. And the other time that I guess is you're forced to transform is when you start declining. And that's where, transformation happens, when you're in a crisis. And usually you got 2 choices. Either you move upwards or you go downwards, right? And you go back into this curve. And sometimes it's the same when you do it for other businesses that are in crisis. Very few businesses actually have that curve. Most businesses actually go down and are doomed. Now, that's typical business. But what COVID has done is that because of the issues, that have creeped up on us, whether it's supply chain issues or whether it's issues related to work from home, managing employees, all kinds of issues, right? Sales being affected. Whatever business you are, you may be a startup business, you may be a business that's kind of a growth stage, you may be scaling, or you may be at a point where you're declining. Almost all businesses are becoming what we call crisis business, right? And so because of that, right, there is a need for transformation, not just for selected businesses that are in a certain zone, like here and here usually, but essentially for all businesses, we have to go through some form of transformation. Now, when we talk about the typical transformation, and we know that HR is going to play a key role in transformation, what we need to understand, I think the next part is that transformation, there are 4 key levels to transformation. And, business model is very important. And this is when we talk about pivoting. So a lot of times business will say, our revenue model doesn't work, our business model doesn't work. Let's figure out a way to pivot, right? So that's one part of the transformation journey. The second part is to ensure that there's alignment. That means the entire organization needs to be aligned to the pivot, or needs to be aligned to the new business model, or needs to be aligned to the new products and services offerings, or needs to be aligned to the way that we're going to sell in a different way, or we distribute or we deliver in a different way. So there's got to be this alignment. And alignment is where HR starts to come in, right? We work with different business leaders to figure out how do we create these alignments? How do we create clarity so that from the person at the top to the person at the bottom, we're all executing in the same direction? Because what's happening in many businesses, people are very tired. They're all working very hard, but one is working very hard going right. The other one's working very hard going left. The other one's working going hard west, north, south, east, and so on and so forth. Everybody's working very hard, but nobody's working together to execute on the business model we agreed on and has the clarity to go on the same direction. So those are the 2 drivers, and I'm not going to speak a little bit much about that. Today, what we're going to zoom in is where we think HR has a real impact. And really, HR drives systems and structures in companies. And what does that mean? Systems and structures are essentially how we enable people to behave. If we structure our company in a certain way, people behave this way. If we put certain policies and systems in our business, people act in a certain way. So this one drives behavior. And then the other piece is culture. And culture is really driven by rituals. And this one ultimately drives mindsets, and mindsets together with behavior drives results, which is what we see, right? And so today I want to zoom in a little bit, and really Sashe and Caroline, we are going to zoom in on this systems and structure piece. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at it and say, look, many times when we have transformation, a lot of work is focused on activity. Let's come up with action plans. Let's come up with a lot of things. Now, for you to truly make sure it becomes, you drive results, right? At the end of the day, to drive results, right, what you need to do is you have to make these activities become structural, to make them into a process, to enable them to have sustainability, to enable them to have consistency, to enable them to have impact. You need to actually create structures. And then ultimately, later on, these have to translate to rituals and they become part of a culture. And then it becomes what we call a self-sustaining, part of the process. And the company then has a very active and thriving organization. So we're going to zoom in a little bit on this structural part because a lot of people are very good at activity. It's good to come up with action items, but how do you translate that into structural processes, right? And that's and when we look at structure, right, there are two elements to structure. The first element, right, is what I call the hardware, right? So there's a hardware element and there's a software, and what we call the hardware is the infrastructure. As HR leaders, our job is to figure out what sort of HR infrastructure do we need to do, whether it's to drive learning, whether it's to drive engagement, whether it's to drive our HR processes, whether to drive, talent sourcing or employer branding or analytics, whatever that, you think are important structures and processes for HR to be thriving in these times, right? You need to start to figure out what is a platform, what are systems, what are structures, what's the infrastructure that I can build. The second thing we need to look at is what we call transactions. So you have hardware, but you need to have the software, the transactions, the daily interactions, the rituals, and we talk in a physical way, that transactions that enable you to bond, that enable you to build trust, that enable you to teach your employees, to enable you to engage with them. All these are transactions, but the transactions need to be housed in a platform that enable these transactions to happen seamlessly. So you need two parts, and this is the times, right? It's like you can have 100% transactions, but no platform. Over time, it's not sustainable. You can have platform with no transaction. Also, it's useless. It's like many systems. We got a lot of great systems, but we have no transactions. So you need the transaction piece, but you also need the platform piece. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the time to Sashe. Sashe is going to talk us through platforms that we can think about. And then later, Caroline is going to talk about transactions that we need to think about. So over to you, Sashe. And over to you, Sashe. All right? Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Roshan. So I think Roshan did a great introduction about the two different pieces where you need platforms and transactions. So just quickly, why do we need platforms, right? Because with technology today, with platforms, you can scale. If you think about an organization with lots and lots of people and HR being a small function within that organization, can you really reach out to everyone, right? And in order to reach out to everyone, you need to enable platforms to do that, right? And you can reach out in some ways even better than you could have done manually, and we'll kind of talk about that later. Engagement is something that needs to be continuous, and platforms allows you to do that versus human interactions can't be continuous sometimes. And also how much personalization you want to put into your interventions, right? So some things can only be contextualized within your company. So if you want to do things within your company, you need to own platforms so that you can curate and tune those platforms to your needs. And that's why we look at platforms as a solution. So let me move forward here. So you can actually solve a lot of things with platforms, but the ones that we are going to talk about are mainly focused in this central area. If you look at the employee lifecycle, I'm not going to share anything today on the attraction and transit part, but there are solutions around onboarding, development, engagement, and managing performance. And I saw from the polls that the top two was L&D and engagement, so we should be able to cover that quite well. So today I'm going to quickly run you through 4 platforms and solutions that we have. Leaderonomics Academy, which is an LMS platform. Nicole, which is an LXP platform. Mentor Cloud, which is a mentoring platform, and Happily, which is an employee engagement platform. So in the next 25-30 minutes or so, you'll see me go through an introduction of the platform. We'll launch a video to kind of give you a look and feel demo of the platform, and then I'll explain what it's used for. So here we go. So the first one I want to talk to you about is a learning management system, which is, I think, something that most people are familiar with. Most of you have already. I kind of want to share with you our solution. for a learning management system, and why it's useful, right? So as LMS, what are you using it for? You're using it for structured learning. Now you can use that. It's a great way to do onboarding, right? Pre-boarding. It's a great way to do when people transition from one role to the other, so that you have very clear structure of what a person needs to be upskilled on when they move from one role to the other. So an LMS is a great way to do that. And our LMS really does that really well because it's got very trainer-focused features. So as a HR L&D department, you get a lot of control over what you want to do with the LMS. So I'm going to quickly move into a demo. I'm going to turn on a video, and hopefully everyone gets to see that video. So now this is our LMS, and as you can see, it can be white labeled. So the name here, the background banners, as well as the URL can be changed. And I'll show you later. We have another system. This is one system. I'm going to log in as a learner view. Later, I'm going to switch over here as a trainer view, which has a different look and feel. So first, let's log in as a learner. This is kind of what you see when you enter as a learner. Like I said, everything here can be customized and white labeled to your company branding. And there's some quick buttons here that you can click on to get to the different functionalities. The best thing I'd like to do is maybe just click on all modules. So if you have content filled up in your LMS, this is where people come and they can search it and they can self-enroll it, right? So we've got tons and tons of content here. This is our internal in-house LMS. So I could maybe look for something. I want to look at all the courses around executive presence. And so you'll see all these modules that are available. So this is kind of the learner exploring the available content which they can enroll in. And once you enroll in it, it'll show up in terms of my skills, the different modules in the different skills that you've been enrolled in, and your completion percentage. This is a quick dashboard to how many skills you're enrolled in, how many modules you've completed. So you've only completed 18% of all the modules you're enrolled in, which is not good here. And of course, we have a leaderboard. These are modules in progress. So we have a leaderboard, so everyone will show up. You can filter by time period, and all these are customizable. There's a rule book that tells you how you get points in order to get on the leaderboard and things like that. So this is just a quick run through of what a learner view looks like. It's a full-fledged LMS. But I think what's interesting is if we could switch over to the trainer view, it's asking me to log in again, so I'll just do that. And maybe just, I'll create a new module. So here's a new module. And this LMS allows you to create new modules that are self-paced, which we call e-learning, live modules, which are webinars, and classroom modules, which are instructor-led trainings, right? So if you do classroom modules, you can even schedule batches. You can pre-schedule batches. You can give students pre-reads and post-reads. We have a QR code scanner, so when people attend class. Live modules, it has a built-in webinars with digital classroom features, which means there's a digital whiteboard where people can write and take their own notes. Quite impressive. So right now I'm just going to do a self-paced module. We'll just call this I don't know, let's call it, I don't know, health and wellness module. Let's say this is a test module. It recommends pictures for you based on what you wrote over here. So we called it health and wellness. So it's obviously recommending medical pictures. So we'll just stick to this one. And here it lets you pick what kind of activities are going to be in this module. And these are the different types of activities that are available. So we've got documents, videos. You can upload YouTube videos. The good thing about YouTube videos is that it doesn't come with any of the ads or post links. So it's a clean YouTube video so people don't get distracted. You can link to a website. You can do objective type quizzes. You can upload SCORM interactive content. You can do subjective assignments where people have to upload an answer or record an answer and upload it. Flashcards are really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to maybe show you some cool things around videos. And yeah, and maybe a flashcard as well. Let's do a video first. So let me start with maybe this one, which is videos, flashcards, and objective type quizzes. I'm going to create that activity here. And let me just upload a video, maybe a sample one that we have. Let me find some content that we can upload. I think I have a sample video here. Great. And there's lots of features around this that's kind of cool. And one of the features that I wanted to show you is when I upload this video, what I can do is add a question right in the middle of the video. So right, and I can say, so what happens here is that the learner has to, when they're watching this video, they'll get to this question. They have to answer the question correctly. If they get it wrong, they can't move forward. They have to kind of start back again. And that's the beauty of quizzing in videos. And they don't get to mark complete until they finish all the rest of the video, including the questions. And it kind of tracks that you've actually watched the entire video. You can allow them to download it. You can make it mandatory, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of features around that. One more thing about flashcards that I wanted to show is the ability to really customize a flashcard. You can design your own card. I'm just going to take one of the templates that's available. Maybe one of these templates. I'm just going to drag and drop it there. And what's cool about this is that, you know, this text here, here's where you can add the body text for the card. I can actually convert text to audio. So for example, here's where you can upload text to the card. Let's say that was the text. I can pick what kind of English I want. Maybe I want an Australian English, a female voice, and it's as easy as that. And it renders that.
Here is where you can upload text to the card.
And I'm not sure whether you could hear that or it's coming through my headset. And then you just save and add that to the card. And so what happens is when somebody reads this, when they get to this card, that text-to-speech automatically starts playing. So they read and listen at the same time. And you can add images, and there's lots of templates you can play with. Lots of configurations as well that you can play with. But basically, that's just a quick, you know, 5-minute tour of the LMS and what it can do. It's very powerful from a trainer perspective. There's lots of settings that you can work with, lots of analytics that you can get when you're working with this. Okay, so in terms of analytics, I just wanted to show you really quickly. Of course, the quiz types, lots of quiz types. You can import it, multiple choice, etc. But let me just go back and show you some of the analytics that we can get. You can get audience analytics as to who's doing what, you know, and what they've completed, things like that. But you can also even get analytics to the content level. So if I look at this video, I can even see at what point people dropped off. So it looked like, you know, a lot of people dropped off after 10 seconds of watching this video. This was the demo video. So we call that the retention graph. You can look at questions, who answered the questions, how well they answer it. You can look at it by learner. So if you can think of it, you know, the analytics are there. Very powerful in terms of an LMS. Okay, so that was a quick run through of the LMS. I know LMS is something that's common. A lot of you are familiar with it and comfortable with it. But I think the real question is, when you have an LMS, does it cover diverse learning experiences? You know, like this one really does the webinars, which is very relevant for today, the classrooms and the e-learnings all in one. It's got social learning, which I didn't share with you the features. It's got, you know, like a Facebook wall, the buzz, the social parts of it. The diversity of activities, so you don't really need another tool to author content. You can author content right in your LMS, which I think is very important. And of course, you get your white labeled app and mobile app as well. So that's a little bit about the LMS. I think this LMS differentiates itself in the ability that you don't need another content authoring tool. And you really can get analytics, data, you know, every single piece of data, how much time somebody spent on it, you know, beyond completion. Just checking how good your quality of your content is even, yeah. So that's the LMS. I'm going to quickly move on to the next one, which is the learning experience platform. This is a little bit newer. A lot of you are already familiar with it, but I think it started really becoming popular last year. And especially in the Asian market, I think it's still relatively new. Our implementation of this is called Nicole. And basically what an LXP does is basically it's a platform where the focus isn't on compliance, content, and push, right? It's based on a user's, learner's experience and pulling content. So what the LXP does is, first of all, it's using AI to aggregate content from different sources. And some of those sources are, for example, experts. internal content. If you have a SharePoint site or a Google Drive, we can pull content from there. Premium content, if you have a subscription to, say, Coursera, Udemy, we can pull content from there. From your LMS, if you have an LMS, we can pull content from there. And free and open source. So they have bots that go and scour the open web to look for content that matches the type of content that you're looking for. Aggregate all this into one platform so that it's about the user's experience. The user doesn't have to worry about where the content came from. It's all on one platform. And then the experience has to be beautiful. It's got to be almost Netflix-like, right? So that people are encouraged to use it. And here we're encouraging people to really participate in the learning process, not just be pushed content like through an LMS. LMS has its place, and then the LXP has its place as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly play for you another video, which will take you through the Nicole demo. So this is Nicole. This is the first page that you'd come to. And when you log in, it'll take you to the landing page. Obviously, this is your profile. And this is your feed. And what happens is your feed gets updated daily or weekly, or depending on how often the content comes in, based on the channels and the people that you follow. So this is personalized. Everyone gets a different view of their feed, and this content keeps changing regularly. So the idea is micro learning, and based on your feed, which is personalized to you because it's based on what you follow, and this content gets refreshed constantly. If not daily, definitely every few days. Now, the easiest way to understand Nicole is to go to the library. And the library is basically an experience kind of like Netflix, where you have different channels that you can consume content in. So here we've organized our channels and curated the content according to self-development topics. You see the topics here. Leadership development topics. Functional development topics. So this is related to the function you have at work. We've got a few special topics where people are interested in these topics. There's content in here that's related to that. You can follow a few experts. This is being added to. And we've got some featured providers. So if you want to consume content right from them, you can click there and kind of consume that. What do I mean by channels? So channels are basically a collection of content. And so if I look at leading an organization, this is content related to leadership, culture, etc. So there's a description of what that channel is. And in that channel, you'll find different types of content. There's smart cards, which are basically a card, which leads to content. We have pathways, which are a series of cards. So if I click on this, which is a pathway about leading by example, it will show you what a pathway is, which is basically a series of cards with quizzes in between, polls in betweens, and things like that. So what it means is that if you complete this series of cards, you get micro-skilled in this topic. And we've got many of these pathways around many channels. So we've got a pathway on culture, change management, org values, and we continue to add pathways every week. So this is curated pathways that we add every week that you'll have access to. And if you follow this channel, so if I click on follow, you'll get a little bell notification. And if I click on the bell, what happens is that you will get notified whenever there's new content in this channel through your mobile app. It'll be a little bell icon, or it'll be a mobile push, depending on what kind of settings you set up. So I'm going to unfollow that. And that's the discover or the library page of Nicole, where you can discover content. You can consume content by just clicking in and going, or you can follow the content. You can see I'm following this channel. So most of my feed comes from that channel versus the people that I'm following. Now, the really unique part about this is we have groups. Now, groups are basically content that is private to your organization. So if I'm part of Leaderonomics and I click into Leaderonomics as a group, you see content that is very specific to Leaderonomics. So we have an initiative happening called Growing Together. So this is part of the engagement, right? So as a HR or L&D or org development person, you use Nicole to engage your employees. And the Growing Together team is pushing out each of these pathways one a week to us, and we kind of consume it, and we do a quiz, and then we get points based on how well we do. You can have your own private channels that's related to your own company, and content that is kind of like your secret sauce to your company. And this is where you house those. And the rest of the people on Nicole don't get access to this. It's private to your organization. And we encourage people to share content. So these are employees in our company who, when they come across something they like and they'd like to share it to Leaderonomics group, they share it to the group, and we've given them that permission. So all the roles can be controlled in terms of permissions. So this serves as knowledge management. So within your company, you have a space where you can manage the knowledge. You can use it for onboarding. You can use it for product briefings, sales briefings. You can get creative with how you want to use it. You can configure these carousels any which way you want, the channels any which way you want. So there's two parts to Nicole. One is this micro org space, which is a knowledge management space, and you use it to engage your employees using knowledge. And you want people to start contributing to that knowledge pool, not just consuming, but participating in that knowledge. And then you have the library, which is public, curated knowledge by us, which is aggregated by AI. And we've grouped it in these channels for people to easily know which of the areas they need to develop. This is the kind of channels that I need to follow, and this is the kind of content that I need to be reading to upskill and self-develop myself. So if you are a self-motivated learner, you will have plenty of content here every week to consume, and it's already pre-curated for you. Now, there's lots of other features I can show you. You know, there's leaderboards, of course, and this is where you set up your profile and things like that. But one last thing I want to show you before we stop the demo is probably the analytics. 98% of everything that's done on Nicole is tracked. So you can actually literally slice and dice the data any which way you want. I can look at the groups. I can look at which content is trending, which is doing well. That kind of gives you insights into your company as well. If you want to look at people, who's contributing the most, you want to reward them. What's the top things that people are searching for? So over here, other than Nicole, I see customer experience and customer satisfaction. It seems to be a very popular search term. So maybe there's some offline training or maybe more specific training you want to give people on that. So that gives you insight as an L&D or HR person into your employees. Which channels are the most popular? Here I can see that project management seems to be very popular, and just lots and lots of data. So you can slice and dice it any way you'd like, which is a really powerful tool of Nicole. So some people call this the Netflix of learning. What we're giving you is basically pre-curated content. You can use it for knowledge management, but you can also use it as your content to push to employees. Managers can use it when they're doing development conversations, saying, hey, listen, I need to develop this person in this particular area. Let me go browse this channel, find the right content, and push it to that person. So you can participate and you can collaborate in the development process. Just to cover back, right? So this is a product where you can do both knowledge management and learning and development push. And it's very collaborative, right? It kind of democratizes the process of L&D, because it's not only the HR and L&D function that's owning the LMS and pushing content out, but you're actually encouraging different businesses to contribute to that knowledge management. You're getting people to participate in that learning, share with each other, creating that community of learning. And you can do pathways, you can personalize it. So every individual follows the channels that is most relevant for their own personal development. And that's where the LXP differentiates itself. So if I was to compare an LMS and an LXP, this is where I'd look at it. And there's this continuum where up top here is more structured learning. And as you come down to the bottom features, it's more of learning culture. You're trying to build a learning culture. A lot of modern organizations actually have both, because there's a need for both, right? It's not one or the other. But the idea is to move slowly from LMS to LXP if possible. And there's some overlap of features and functionality, of course, just like any development and evolution of a product. I'm happy to answer questions on this more, but since we have limited time, I'm going to keep moving. The next platform I want to talk about is mentoring. This is a particularly favorite of mine. The idea, everybody knows the importance of mentoring, right? And the idea is to move knowledge through the organizational ecosystem. And the way you do that is by having conversations. But actually, I think a lot of us started wrong. I've been part of a mentoring relationship, both as a mentor and a mentee in many, many previous organizations. And I can confidently say that every single one of those failed. And most people I talk to, that's the experience they have. But I do have a lot of successful mentoring relationships from my previous organizations. They were just never formally organized by HR. They all happened organically between people. And here's why. Because we start with a mentoring relationship, but actually before you have a mentoring relationship, you first must have a relationship. And before you have a relationship, you must have a bond with someone. And before you have a bond with someone, the way you start having a bond with someone is by having conversations. And so we kind of flip the paradigm and we say, let's start by just enabling conversations in the organizations. And when you enable conversations, you create bonds, and bonds create relationships. And then eventually you get to a point where you can have a formal mentoring relationship. And that's why this platform is unique, because it enables conversations across the organization. So the idea is a mentor sets up topics, and the mentee then gets matched to the mentor based on the topics that they are willing to talk about. You schedule sessions, you have conversations, there's feedback that goes on, both mentor and mentee feedbacks. And then based on this behavior, you might then get into a mentoring relationship. And only when you get into a mentoring relationship do we then provide the platform where a mentor and a mentee can share resources, share to-do lists, have regular check-ins, have an app where they can do constant communication with each other. So this is a serious mentoring relationship. But before you get to a mentoring relationship, the idea is to create conversations. So without delaying further, let me actually go share a demo of what it is I'm talking about. This is our Mentor Cloud Spark system, and this is one configuration of it. And so in the landing page, what you'll see is, this is my profile, obviously. So some quick orientation. If you see someone with a green and a red circle around their face, that means they're both a mentor and a mentee. In this particular instance, we've allowed everyone to be both, and that's configurable. Some people can be mentors, some people can be mentees. And it's a pretty basic dashboard. So up here are recommended mentors for me based on my profile, my wants, my needs. And so it's as simple as me just literally going down here, picking the person I want. I can click on them to read a little bit more about them, whether it fits what I'm looking for. And then these are the sessions that Nigesh here has made himself available. And all I can have to do is just kind of click in. And you will see that it checks my calendar and it tells me that I have a conflict. So I probably want to pick something else on a different day that might be available. Unfortunately, all his time slots are 11 to 12, and I'm busy during that time slot. Now, if there was an available time slot, all I have to do is propose a location. It can be a physical location. I would like to meet him, maybe in his office, maybe in the cafe, or a virtual session. I could send a virtual link. I'll have to specify what my goals are and what any other thoughts that I have before I book the session. And as soon as I book the session, it actually gets blocked on his calendar as well as mine. Yeah. So that's how you book a mentor. As a mentor myself, I can open up sessions, and this is how I open up sessions and pick the day, the time, how many people are allowed to join me in that session, and how long that session is going to be. So you can actually have many to one as well. These are my upcoming sessions that people have booked with me, right? And so you can see that I have one on May 29th, I have one on June 16th. This is a live system, by the way. So these are actual real meetings. These are unbooked sessions where I've made myself available on the calendar, but nobody's booked them yet, right? But of course, somebody would be able to search for it and be able to book them. These are the past sessions that I've had with people, and I could click in and look at the details. I can provide feedback. So feedback is given both ways, both from mentor to mentee as well as mentee to mentor. And that's basically how it works, and all in one dashboard. You can browse mentors. If you don't like those that have been suggested to you, you can browse and find other mentors. There's a space to add learning material for people to click on and read and learn about things. And these are where you actually have a formal mentoring relationship. And it kind of suggests to you who you might be eligible to have a mentoring relationship with, which is based on how many times you've met and what kind of feedbacks you've given each other. This is one configuration. We have another configuration where it's a lot more focused on the mentoring relationship, where you and the mentor or mentee have a private space where you can communicate, share to-do lists, share private content with, and that'll be a different configuration. I won't show that today. Now, this is where you set up your profile so that mentees and mentors can read about you and see whether there's a fit. This is also the data that the AI engine uses to match you with mentors or mentees. These are feedback that people have given based on sessions that they've attended with me. When you give feedback, there's two types of feedback. One is public feedback. Public feedback is shown on the person's profile. And then there's private feedback where nobody gets to see except for HR or the administrators of the system. And you get that by going to the admin panel, which is over here. And you get to see dashboards of how many mentoring sessions are happening, which is great. So you've got all the analytics you'd like, the mentees, the mentors, the demographics. You can look at different data based on the different sessions. If people haven't filled out surveys, you can resend it or you can view the surveys. This is a quick way to engage users. So for example, if I want to quickly talk to mentees who have never booked a session, right? I can actually just write up an email and send it, and the system already knows who these people are. So you can engage your employee base directly from the system. You can look at data from the surveys, the mentor surveys, mentee surveys. This is where you upload the users, and you can look at specific data for specific users. That's basically it. So that's a quick intro tour to MentorCloud Spark. Remember, we had two versions. This is the Spark configuration, which is about intentional conversations. The other configuration is an enterprise configuration where we focus more on the mentoring relationship, where if you already have one-to-one mentors, dedicated mentor-mentee relationships, then we can look at that configuration, because then you want a personal space for them to communicate with. I know we're running through these products really quickly, but what we want to do is give you a flavor of what can be done with platforms and digitalization. And really, this one really flips the paradigm of mentoring, right? To really talk about, even in a small company like Leaderonomics, we have 60, 70 people. You would think that we know everyone, but once you turn on MentorCloud, you see we enable more conversations than we thought, right? And people really appreciate having access to those senior leaders or having conversations and getting help at the time of need. So it's both an L&D solution and an engagement solution in that sense. Okay, final platform, I promise, then you don't have to listen to me anymore. So Happily, it's our employee engagement app, and this one is really amazing. It's amazing because it's simple. So the big problem with employee engagement today that I see is that we do these pulse surveys at the end of the year. And what does that tell you? That tells you, how engaged your employees are, but it's such a lag indicator, right? You know something about your employees' engagement 12 months after they've been unhappy or something like that, right? So how useful is that? It's probably too late because when people are not engaged, their mind's checked out, and then you've already lost all that potential in that person, and they're probably looking for outside jobs anyway. So engaging a person should be a daily affair, a weekly affair, a monthly affair, not something you do after 12 months, 18 months, right? And engagement is more than just, how happy am I, or, how good the relationship is with your manager. You actually need to look at it from 9 different dimensions of work life. So these are the 9 dimensions that Happily looks at. And we do this through a very, very simple app. It's an app that you use daily, and it works because it's so simple. It takes 30 seconds daily, and it's fully gamified. So without delaying further, let me add a video.
Each day, you'll receive questions that you can quickly respond to with honest, real-time feedback. As you answer questions, you'll collect coins that you can then use to redeem special company benefits and rewards. After answering questions each day, you'll receive sparks, which are quotes, knowledge, and challenges on self-improvement and better management from bestsellers and leading thought leaders from around the world to help you resolve your workplace challenges. Here, your notifications let you know that your feedback has gotten a reply from your manager. Easily continue your conversation within the app or take it offline at your next one-on-one meeting. And if you want feedback from your peers, you can do that here too. Just tap and select who you want feedback from once a month, and your lucky peers that you select will be notified to give you feedback. Once they get back to you, you'll be able to view them from your message inbox. Every time you get help from your colleagues, you can use your recognition power-ups to send them coins as a thank you. If you receive a coin box, that means you got recognition from someone at work. And if you happen to be a top performer this past month, you may receive a gem box from your manager too. The coins and gems you collected can be used to redeem rewards and company benefits when you want. Managers get feedback from and insights about their teams and can mediate in real time. Now, managers can better understand team challenges so that they can provide help and support more timely and effectively. In the bottom of your activity feed, you could tap into your Happily village. Start by getting sorted into your house that best represents your work style, after which you can join other activities in the village. The university is a great place to exchange skills. You can create or join a classroom organized by a colleague, or you can even charge coins for your own classes. The town hall is a place you can discuss and share ideas and read about the happenings at work. You can create topics or polls or follow important announcements here. And for new ways to recognize or thank your peers, go to the gift shop, where you can exchange your coins to send gifts to others right from your fingertips. And because living an active and healthy lifestyle at work is vital, go out for a walk or run with your favorite people and get a good workout on the running track.
And that's basically it. And because of its simplicity and the gamified nature and the really nice user interface, what is happening is that a lot of people are engaging on it on a daily basis. In fact, over 60% of people engage on it on a weekly basis. And that's when you get really good, important insights.
So if you're looking at data, all the data you're looking for is available here. You can look at the dashboard where you're looking at different types of activity over time. This is a demo site, by the way. And look, you can look at it by teams, what are the happiness rate of the teams versus the risk rate. So all these are fake departments. So you might want to look down here and say, oh, listen, in general, wellness has been an issue in my company. You can kind of see that trend already, right? Or if you're zooming in into one department, most departments are okay. Maybe you want to start looking at ones with two red things. Why is marketing low on ambassadorship? You would think that they would be the highest. So something needs to be addressed there. You can look at managers and kind of look at which managers are active, passive, things like that. And that's important because you want to kind of make sure managers are actually interacting with their teams. And that's really important. Who are the different people? We actually rank people based on, crowd favorite, high performer, hidden talent. And this is all based on data that's coming from the app, not just stuff that they answer, but how others are responding to them. Remember, there's peer feedbacks happening as well. And that's basically it. And you can do some configurations here, like if you want to add some specific questions, custom questions, you can do that as well. And you don't like some questions, you can remove them. But generally, we advise you to use the questions that we have because they're actually curated very purposefully and intentionally. You can get a quick dashboard of how the team's doing across the 9 different dimensions of people science. So that's a quick demo and intro of Happily. That was Happily, our employee engagement app. And I didn't get to show you a lot of the actual features for my phone, but we've got the Happily Village. It's really real time, and then that's key to difference between this and other employee engagement apps. You get feedback real time, managers get insights real time that they can act on, and so to catch a problem as and when it happens is invaluable, and it happens because it's so simple. And because it's simple and it's gamified, we get over 60% engagement. People are answering the questions every day, believe it or not. And that's when you get real good, deep insights. So quickly, just to share with you the ecosystem, so I shared with you 4 products today. 1 is purely in the engagement space, 2 are purely in the learning and development space. Mentor Cloud is kind of bridging both. They all have different purposes, and that's what we do. We bring in systems that we are the system implementers for, platforms that we feel are useful, we've vetted them, we implement them, we support you on them. and in different spaces. And that's it for my presentation. I believe Nigesh will have a poll for you.
Yep. Thanks, Sashe. Thanks for bringing us through all four of those platforms. So for everybody, I'm sorry if I'm going to gun this quite quickly, but to just save time, I'm going to launch a poll right now. And the question is, which of these platforms would you find most beneficial and useful for your organization? Great. Thanks for that answers, everybody. Now, of course, the golden question is this. Would you like us to contact you or someone from your team to share more about these platforms and other possible systems and platform that you may find useful for your organization? Please let us know, and that'll be really useful for us to know which one of you would like to have a further conversation on this. Right now, I'd like to pass this on because Roshan did introduce things and mention about two very important components that we're talking to you about. We talked about platforms to enable engagement and growth, the infrastructure and system. Now, like Roshan mentioned, the software that is required for this, the virtual solutions that provides the high context and continuous learning. This is the learning and engagement component. Now, for this part, I am going to hand it over to Caroline. Caroline, there you go. So Caroline Ong, who is a country manager for Malaysia. On to you, Caroline.
Thank you, Nigesh. And it was a really good session, listening to the platform kind of discussions. But I'm also putting myself into your shoes and thinking, okay, now there's so many things that we need to consider here. Just like when COVID-19 started, and I think a lot of us are actually safe at home, not stuck at home. Then the question that comes by is, we are all like baking like crazy, or many of us are baking. How do you even start if you don't know where to begin? And I think that's the question that I asked myself today. So where do we start if we are looking at all these platforms? Do we start small? And I think there are some questions there. Or do we really want to just, go all out, right? And is it possible for us to know what is actually available in the market today? What does Leaderonomics have? Now, this is what I have to share here is really quite a guided and structured approach. And I'd like to say that there's actually point system or a calculator where you can actually add up the points in order to guide your approach. How do we virtualize the L&D space specifically for your organization? And the point system calculator, which I can share with you right after this, if you send me an email at my email or send it to the generic email info@leaderonomics.com, covers three big areas, right? And the third area is what Sashe has spoken about, so I will not go into that, about infrastructure availability. But just to speak a little bit about the first area and the second, which is, first of all, when we look at L&D, and I'm going to really focus on L&D here, L&D, where and what kind of starting point should we be looking at really depends on what is our organization and business direction. Because a lot of this is an alignment, and that alignment needs to really come by post-COVID-19. And I think different organizations are at different value chain and different impact of what is happening. Do we need to pivot completely, or is it a little bit? Maybe it's just 50%. For some, it's 20%, but for some, it could be as much as 80-90%. And how does that translate into the skills level that are required for teams, for individuals? And which one of these do we need to upskill or reskill? So each one of these has actually an area where we need to really, really assess, because then it would actually give us an idea of the sense of urgency as an organization, where to start and how to start. Now, that's the first big picture. The second part that I would like to speak about is the readiness for the changes. As we all know, in terms of effectiveness, different organizations, and I might say different departments as well, in terms of large organizations, departments may have a different appetite and management. In that case, we need to look at three big areas here. How do we know where to start? how much to start? Do we start on a small targeted group pilot, or do we start across the board in terms of masses? Yeah, so that boils down to three different things that I want to touch upon here. One is, what is the preferred delivery mode? What is more effective for your people, for your organization? And only you will be able to tell this. And like I said, because there's a point system behind, we will add up the points and give you the advice on how to do it. But there are basically three big options right now. One is, we are totally switching to virtual, and our people are good with that. Right, no problem. Yeah, we are all very technologically savvy and able to, do this virtually. But of course, we have the other end where I think, just like baking, we must know where our limitations are, right? And in this case, perhaps our people are not as ready. And so we are still believing that it should be more physical focused, right? So, or it could be a hybrid in between, right? So that's one. Now, the second one is, how much time do you have available? Say in a quarter, yeah? Are we looking at bite size? Are we flexible? Perhaps 2 to 3 days accumulatively in terms of time per person? Or perhaps the answer is, I think we would, we are open. We would like to invest for deep skilling in different areas, right? And that is in terms of how much time as an organization, as a department, that we are willing to invest in people. The third area, which learning style is most effective, right? And in some organizations, no right, no wrong, but the readiness factor is more towards instructor or facilitator led. Number two, perhaps in some cases, you know what, I'm really practical here. In some cases, HR has to do more of the heavy lifting. HR has to do the push. But is that the case for everyone? Perhaps not. But in the third possibility or factor of consideration that you may want to have is, do I need assessments and certifications as part of the learning process? And if I need to, then of course, the way that I want to go in is different. And you have the fourth and fifth. What is the source of learning? Do we prefer to be internal only so that we have a standardized way of approaching things? Or are we saying open to both internal and external? Now, together with all of this, we are able to look at it, and we are able to say, have a guided approach. Where do we start virtualizing? And is this something that we can do on our own, or perhaps from a Leaderonomics perspective, is there something that you can do to help us? And this is where I want to go a little bit more into sharing some of the currently available things. I'm going to move on here. So these are the three big things in terms of the virtual solution that we have. So of course, besides this is consulting, which is bringing you through this process. But the three big things that I want to cover today is, number one, we call it VAC, or Virtual Assessment Center. But basically, to know where you are, you may want to have access to the level that they are at and their readiness and where they're going to go. So that one, you may need a virtual assessment center. Then we go into VLI, which is virtual learning interventions. And these are more for awareness and engagement. You can do it over a big group of people. Typically, they are bite-sized, and I will run through very quickly. There are even things like fireside chats, speaker engagement, team building, but there are also learning interventions that you can put in. Just for example, like the webinar today, say we want to go deep into your L&D team and you want to do instructional learning for L&D. Well, is that a VLI or is that a VDP? If it is an awareness piece, it's just to get the awareness there, perhaps it's a bite-sized solution that you're looking at after answering all the readiness questions that we have. And of course, if you want to look at a longer term, more intentional build-up effect of different pieces, and it could be a blended version as well for very specific teams, like for example, for the L&D team, or for the high post, or for your leadership teams, or project teams, or departments. These are in the virtual development programs. Now, there's a lot of details behind these three, VAC, VLI, and VDP, that we have already on hand today. But like I said, where do you start? You start where it is most effective. Now, I do realize it's 3 o'clock, and I think we were all very engrossed with the demos, which is very important for us to also have an opportunity to show. So apologies, I'm going to take a couple more minutes than expected to go through this. So I hope that works for you as well. I'm going to move on to the next slide here. Now, I'm going to go really quickly on this. So VAC, as a lot of you would know and perhaps would already be interested or conducting as a physical, but right now a lot of things can be virtualized. It can be virtual CBI or competency-based interviews. It can be assessment centers. It can be psychometrics, yeah. And assessment centers, of course, include scenario-based. So are we ready today to go fully virtual in terms of assessment center? Yes, for scenario-based. Now, I'm going to move on to virtual learning interventions, or VLI. Just a quick run through. We have webinars that I think a lot of us are familiar in this MCO. There's a lot of webinars going on, but there are also webinar plus, which means to say it's not a one-off. The one-off is a kickstart as an awareness, but you build deeper engagement. And then there's the speaker session, and there's virtual content library, or VCL, where you are actually able to consume at your own pace, but there's different pieces of content, just like what some of the things that Sashe has mentioned. And there is virtual team building. You know how we associate team building with physical? Today, it's all virtual. Now, to give you a flavor, again, to answer the question of, once I decide where I need to start, what do I know is out there? Yeah, just a kind of flash up here is that these are actually the things that are ready now. Now, a lot of you who may be involved in succession planning, we always say RO, R1, R2, right? RO being ready now, yeah? So these are actually ready now. Leadership webinar series across many different topics that you can see here. These are the pillars, and inside each one of these pillars, we have multiple modules. So in total, we have 130 titles available for you across 3 webinar series. Leadership webinar series is one, and we ran a series of it at the start of MCL. We have frontline webinar series. Again, during this time, I think that our frontliners is our go-to, right? Our bread and butter, and we're going to really make things happen. So how do we also help them equip themselves so that we have the frontline webinar series already available? And we also have the SME webinar series. This is when, because we do try to be as inclusive as possible, and when you have either smaller teams who are acting like entrepreneurs within a big organization, or you come from an organization where you believe that everybody needs to learn all of this, it's also available. Switching very quickly to what we call the virtual content library that I mentioned. This one, there's a Be a Leader series, and there are different things that are already in there with more than 150 titles, by the way, yeah. And the longer term one, which is the VDP, or Virtual Development Program. Now, just to speak through it very quickly, there are some programs which are actually instructor-led. And this is where in the olden days, yeah, or in the past, we used to have instructor, facilitators, trainers, yeah, and they would actually be leading through this. It could be a 2-day program, but broken down to different slots. But because when you do it virtually, it's really hard, as you know, to sit through a 2 days. So, but it could be a 2-hour program. Yeah, there are virtual courses where it's specially curated for a self-paced, but it's a long-term and very curated, targeted. Yeah, we do coaching. We have virtual coaching been running for some time, and on top of just having the coach speak to you, perhaps you may want to consider associated development learning opportunities to give to the coaches so that they can also learn at the same time within the same topic that they're being coached on. And that's called coaching class, as well as a full blended learning. So for example, for your high post, now this is a question that I think we all have. Even if MCO is lifted in Malaysia, how long would it be before we can go back to the full physical classroom? And honestly, nobody knows the answer today. So in that case, do we stop there today for our high potentials, for our talent acceleration programs? Or do we start with some virtual part and do a blended approach? So this is where it is, right? So this is kind of the summary of it, of the VAC, VLI, and VDP, which is the extended time that I have asked for, because at the end of the day, I think COVID-19 has made us develop different skills. It could be baking skills, it could be many other skills, as well as forging different paths. So I think this is the community that we want to be together. In this L&D community, honestly, the world is getting smaller, not larger. And how do we support each other and connect with each other and grow together? So what I'd like to offer to you is really, whether it's myself or one of my team members, to actually help guide you to virtualize L&D through some of the steps that we have talked about. And I would like to provide to you that time and support, as well as the calculator, so that you can actually look at the calculator, look at the point system, and have a guided approach. Where do we start and how do we start? So basically, that is actually what we have. Just to sum up, and that has taken an additional 5 to 6 minutes to what is already shared here from Roshan to Sashe in terms of platform. And for myself, where do you start and what is available? Of course, I would like to take more time, but I'm also very, I'm very sorry that, we have overshoot time, and I would like to actually very quickly close this so to allow us a little bit of time for polls as well as questions. So perhaps this is the time I can pass it back to you, Nigesh.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks for that. And once again, we'd like to apologize to everyone for taking a little bit more of your afternoon time. As we reach the tail end a little bit, I'm going to push back to this slide. So this is sort of a encapsulation of everything that has been spoken of today. So I think Roshan kicked it off by saying it's a very new challenge that we're facing right now, especially in not just L&D, but the HR space itself. And we need to figure out how we're going to not only engage, how we're going to develop, and how we're also going to know what's actually happening on the ground with employees in our organization. So this is just a quick snapshot to show as an overall what we have figured out could be ways to move forward. And I would like to close off by saying we'll be more than happy to have a conversation with any of you at any point in time to see how can we do this for you and your organization. So looking at the Q&A screen, I think some have already been addressed by Sashe. All right. Further questions that you may have, we've captured, we know, and we will actually contact you according to the permission you've given us for those of y'all who would like to find out more about, as Roshan mentioned, the infrastructure and also the solutions that we can bring to you in this time of change, especially when we need to virtualize, but at the same time, keep relevant things from the past. So at this moment, I think we've already reached 3:10. I'd like to say a huge thank you to everybody who has been here with us throughout the session. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Once again, apologies for us from taking a bit more time. And we'll hope to hear from you, speak to you, and meet you very soon. Take care, everybody.